3D or not 3D? That's certainly the question here. This is Sega Masters. We continue our march through the fall of 1988 with today's offering, Blade Eagle 3D. And just as the title screen suggests, it is a space action game. However, it's also the fifth in the SegaScope line of 3D cartridges, so it's once again time to pull out the LCD shutter specs. Though a red flag might be raised by the fact that the game is referred to as simply Blade Eagle on the title screen without the 3D suffix present, even though the game is unplayable without the specs. We've previously covered the first 4 titles in the SegaScope series, and while none of them, save Missile Defense 3D, would be considered anything great, in one way or another they all managed to provide some rather impressive 3D visuals to still convince gamers to give them a look, even when the gameplay itself is lacking. Sadly, that's not the case with the cartridge you're looking at today. For one thing, Blade Eagle turns out to be a top-down vertical shooter that somehow uses the 3D glasses. And this opening stage certainly doesn't give a good first impression for those who are expecting the dazzling graphics found in other SegaScope carts. Anyway, this game tasks you with coming to the aid of a trio of planets that are being overrun by the evil Arvian race, and you need to beat them back in your Blade Eagle fighter ship. Your quest covers 9 total areas set among 3 worlds, and like most other shooters, you slowly coast forward through each level, blasting the run-of-the-mill hostile forces that cross your path in their set formations, from aliens to ships to even space rocks. You even have a mini-boss that drops by several times in each level to menace you, and disposing of it will net you one of the standard shooter power-ups, which can speed up your ship, upgrade your weapon up to 4 levels, and even provide a drone ship to fight by your side. The by-the-numbers gameplay leaves you feeling the programmers just threw a basic shooter together while banking entirely on a 3-dimensional gimmick to sell it. Blade Eagle tries to justify requiring the 3D glasses by having the action take place across 2 playing fields representing low and high altitude. The idea is your foes attack from either of the 2 heights, thus your ship has to climb or dive to intercept them at the proper altitude by pressing button 1 to move into and out of the background. This feature does keep Blade Eagle from being just another version of Astro Warrior, and Sega's plan might have worked had the 3D actually been programmed somewhat competently. But right from the beginning you can see this cart doesn't feature the best effort at 3D visuals. A space backdrop is hardly the ideal setting for creating any convincing sense of depth, and the only indication of anything changing heights, be it your ship or your foes, is the sprites shrinking or growing, which do little to add to the illusion. Eventually the space level concludes with your ship finally arriving at its destination and descending down to continue the battle in the second level. Your next objective is to skim across the planet's surface on your way to the Arvian fortress. The visuals still look rather plain with mostly barren landscapes, but you do get these structures that rise out of the ground trying to convey a sense of depth. You wouldn't know this was supposed to be a water planet unless you read the manual. In fact, Blade Eagle's 3D is so poorly implemented it just about breaks this cart by making an already intense game unnecessarily frustrating to play. Plenty of enemies swarm you from all directions, and the game's 3D structure forces you to constantly adjust your ship back and forth so you can be properly aligned to blast all the hazards in your path. Yet the sprites don't do anything to really indicate which heights the threats are coming from, so you're often guessing whether or not they or their projectiles will actually harm you or just pass by you. There's also a slight lag when you change altitudes, leaving you vulnerable for a brief moment. It doesn't show in this video's footage since I used a hacked ROM to display everything in 2D, but when viewing the action through the SegaScope specs, there are numerous instances of 2 separate images not coming together like they should, and trying to focus your eyes to get the proper 3D image will give you headaches. The background music isn't the worst, in fact some of it is catchy, but much like the visuals it won't have you tapping your toes. The last leg of each planet takes place inside the Arvian fortress itself, where you have to fight through the last line of defenses keeping you from the boss who awaits your arrival at the end of this corridor. Good luck trying to survive the graphical chaos with everything flying at you from both heights, including enemies that suddenly pop up from behind you and zap you before you have time to react. As you might expect, just one hit kills your ship and forces you to restart a ways back in the level. On top of that, you also have to worry about slamming into these walls, which can happen quite often since you can easily forget the height you're at. Incidentally, should you die with the drone ship equipped, your little buddy immediately takes over with all your upgrades intact. If by some chance you somehow survive the grueling gauntlet and reach the end of the level, you're confronted by the boss and obviously have to defeat them in one-on-one combat. In a rather ironic twist, while the level itself is brutally difficult, the bosses are almost too easy to dispatch. Even with the weakest weapon, you can waste them within seconds. Then it's off to continue the battle across the other two planets, each of which follows the same cycle and even begins with an identical space stage. You're only given 3 lives to get through all 9 levels, with no continues or any way to get extra ships. A level select cheat is available if you want to skip ahead to actually see the later areas. All in all, Blade Eagle is easily the worst of the SegaScope titles, and a blah cartridge overall. It lacks anything to make you want to see the action through the 3D specs, and on its own merits, it's a forgettable shooter with nothing noteworthy to help it stand out other than its feeble attempt at 3D, which only ruins it further. Everything you see in this card can easily be found in superior shooter titles on the Master System that don't need the glasses, including one we'll be covering soon. Overall, this Eagle doesn't fly and can easily be skipped.